Good. Okay, welcome to Diabetes, Stress, and Depression. I know today's topic isn't that uplifting or exciting, but maybe you'll get some really good tips. And sometimes when we're struggling, maybe we can figure out some easier ways to handle our stress and maybe not get depressed. So when I think about stress, I mean, it attacks you very quickly, it's suddenly. And I found this perfect picture. I really believe somebody took it of me. So we're going to go to it. Maybe. There we go. So what do you guys think? Does that look like you guys? You ever felt like you were being chased by the stress monster?
Really, this is me today. Yep.
Absolutely. I know. It's like that picture is me. Somebody snapped that while I was freaking out. So we know that stress can be positive or negative. In this picture, obviously, stress is a little bit on the negative side. How about this one? I know you guys have related to this before. You had to have related to this. How your body reacts to certain situations is a good definition for stress. You know what she's yelling. She's yelling, customer representative. Have you guys ever been on there trying to just talk to a person? It's so frustrating. But that is, I'm sorry, guys. I'm having just a little trouble with a little technical difficulty now and then. That's not what I want either. Okay, we're just going to move on here. All right. So here's another example of stress. What do you guys think about this one? This is a positive stress reaction. And you can imagine all the struggles that these students have gone through to achieve graduation. I'm sure they are so excited. But it's not just a little bit of stress. They've had stress. They have stress going to school, stress getting to school. Maybe the weather was good or bad. Maybe they had a headache or they were ill. Maybe they were stressing over that final test. And each time they had that stress, they were getting a little closer to graduation. So while it might have been alarming at the time, this is their final result. So they have to be pretty happy about that, right? Okay. So now let's look a little more detail on how stress affects the body. So the first thing it does on your nervous system, your heart and blood pressure increase. And I'm sure when we're going through these, I want you guys to try to think about a stressful time and see if this seems to fit the bill. Your musculoskeletal system, your muscles tense. You can even have tension headaches. Your respiratory system, your breathing quickens. Your cardiovascular system, as we said, your heart beats faster. Those things might be things that you can really see and notice. The endocrine system, that will be something you may not notice quite as much. So when you have extreme stress, your body will send signals to release cortisol and stress hormones. This is kind of important for a lot of different reasons. If you've heard the word cortisol before, that is one of they consider a stress hormone. They talk about that a lot with buildup of abdominal fat in females. So they believe that females maybe have a little more stress, that cortisol is released more often, and it causes us to build up more fat in the abdomen. So that's kind of an important thing to kind of think about. Controlling our stress can not only help with diabetes, but it can help with weight management, bad habits, all kinds of things. So for the gastrointestinal system, your eating habits may change. I'm sure that's true. I've had many stressful events in my life where the stressful event just seems more important than everything, and you can't step aside from it for a while. But maybe I don't eat as much, or maybe eat too much. Stress eating. The other one I like is butterflies. And the reason I like it when it mentioned that, my son was very active in sports, and he was very fast running the 400-meter run. And colleges had wanted him to come run for him, and he didn't want to do it. He said, "Mom, it's too stressful. I don't like it." And I said, "But why? You love it." I said, You're so happy when you finish. He goes, I know, Mom, but it's that minute where they go down and you get in those blocks and they go set and you're up on your heels and you're ready to roll. He goes, the butterflies are horrible. So that's a good example of how it affects the GI system. Anytime you feel those butterflies, you're probably experiencing some stress. Stress is not a one size fits all. We all have different experiences, different support systems, and different coping skills. So for somebody that has never had, for example, a death in their family, they may not have any experience. It may be extremely stressful. They may have trouble sleeping, eating, just managing life for a little while till they get used to it and try to adapt. People that have had a lot of deaths in their family doesn't make it less painful, or they're not less unhappy, but they do have some different coping skills. They may be able to handle it a little better. Stress identification. So this is where I want you guys to do something for me. I know you thought you wouldn't have to do anything. It's not really homework, but I want you guys to take a moment and jot down everything you can think about that causes you stress when you think about diabetes. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to do that. Grab a pen and just jot down some things. Then we're going to talk about them a little bit. I'll give you about a minute. How about that? I've kind of already cheated because my next slide is the one that I have done. If you don't have a pen and paper handy, just kind of count on your fingers. You know, how many things make me stressed out about diabetes? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, guys. You should see the screen change there for a second. There we go. Definitely get back to my slide here while you guys finish up your list of stressful things about diabetes. Okay, now I want you guys to identify the most stressful challenge that you've had with diabetes. If you don't have diabetes, you're obviously here to learn about it. So just jot down something that you think would be most stressful, or keep it in your mind. And then keep that in front of you. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. Okay, here's my list, and I got to admit, I cheated a little bit because I'm a diabetes educator, so I've had lots of experience with different people. But the first thing that I think would be most stressful for myself personally, because unfortunately I love sweets, so I would say I am not giving up my sweets, man. Can't do it, no way. There's so much to learn. I might be concerned about testing, and you can see all the things I've listed there. My diet, medications. I like the diet thing because I'm not a really good vegetable eater. So that would be a big challenge for me, is to try to eat more vegetables and have a more balanced diet. It's a great goal, and I am working on that, just so everybody knows. I'd be worried about doctor's appointments, work concerns. And I've talked with a lot of people who have diabetes and are still in the workforce, and they have problems with having routine meals at work. And for people that take insulin, that is a big deal. And so that's something, you know, that would be a big concern. Transportation, long-term complications, you can see all of this list here. Some of you guys are maybe already experienced some of this, or maybe you haven't yet. Maybe, hopefully, you're not far along in diabetes that you've hit some of these situations yet. But those are some concerns that can really cause you to be stressed with diabetes. Okay, so how does stress really affect diabetes? We're talking about it, everybody has stress, but what does it do specifically for diabetes? So the first thing it does, there's three things here: lifestyle, hormone changes, and immune system. we're going to talk about lifestyle choices. This one is kind of important because these are things that if we're more mindful, we might be able to control them a little better, right? So when we're stressed out, if we can identify our stress and be more aware of it and try to figure out how to manage it, we can help manage our nutrition, our activity, our medications. When you're stressed out and stress has overtaken your life, sometimes we don't pay as much attention to these things on this page as we should. It's not uncommon when someone has a family member that's acutely ill in a hospital, and boy, doesn't that sound about like our life right now. They may skip meals, they may not eat properly. You may be so overwhelmed that you're staying home and not doing anything. But you can see here, these are things, if we can kind of be mindful of our stress, we might be able to manage somewhat. Now we're going to talk about stress and hormones and how that works. So when we get stressed, our body triggers the release of stress hormones, and they begin to rise. And you can see I've listed about 4 or 5 of them. So the more, when that hormones are released, it causes the liver to dump a bunch of glucose out. And so therefore, when you have diabetes and you're stressed, your glucose is going to be elevated. That is called the fight or flight syndrome. So your body is dumping you a bunch of glucose so you can react very quickly. For example, if you're driving down the road, and this happens to people, all of us, you're driving down the road and a child runs out in front of you, you slam on your brakes, grab your chest and go, ah, real loud, or maybe not so loud. So what has happened in that moment is your body identified a child running out. This is stress. You've got to have some glucose so you can move really, really fast. It dumps you a bunch of glucose. Your mind makes a decision and you slam on the brakes. So that's kind of a good example of glucose fight and flight situation where your body is releasing you glucose to act quickly. So at the same time, your cortisol levels are rising, and that causes your muscle and fat cells, some of them, to be less sensitive to insulin. So now we've got a bunch of glucose dumped into our system, and now suddenly our insulin, or our cells, are not allowing the insulin to open the door and let them in. So you can see how the glucose is starting to build in the bloodstream. That in itself makes you create more glucose because the cells are like, man, I need glucose. Where's it at? And so your body dumps out more glucose. And as a result of all of that, this triggers the immune system. And I put in parentheses cytokines because that's mentioned specifically here in a minute. So that's kind of something that if we're not aware in managing our stress, our body does automatically. You don't even think about it. You know, when you're thinking lifestyle choices, you may be stressed out for 3 or 4 days and you may think, man, I missed a meal. I didn't sleep good last night. You can identify some of those things, but with the hormones, it's a little more difficult because it's so automated. Okay. And now we're going to talk about stress in the immune system. So we know that those enzymes or those hormones trigger the immune system. So type 1 diabetes is considered an autoimmune disease. There are other things that cause it, but for example, if you had a car wreck and injury to your pancreas that damaged your beta cells, you wouldn't be making insulin. But in this situation, we're just talking about the immune part. So the autoimmune disease is when the body reacts and it starts to attack itself. So it attacks the pancreas and it kills its insulin producing cells. So when your body kills your beta cells, you don't grow those back. So you're going to have permanent damage and you won't be able to make insulin. In that situation, a person would have to take insulin for life. Type 2 diabetes, they have found a link between insulin resistant and high levels of cytokines. And the cytokines are in response when the immune system is triggered. That is something that initiates the inflammation process. So they're kind of tied together. So chronic inflammation damages the beta cells that make insulin. So there you go. We've got more problems because of our stress. damaging our cells. And I also, in my research, I threw this in there because I thought it was really interesting. Obesity is linked to low-level inflammation. So when we're looking at diabetes, we'll often see people that have a little extra weight on them. And so, obesity can be a cause related to type 2 diabetes. So now we've talked about the ways that stress affects the body. Now we're going to talk about stress and depression. So research has shown that depression, people with diabetes has shown an increase in depression. So just having that disease itself puts you at increased risk. And then insulin resistant type 2 diabetes people have higher serotonin in their blood. And so the serotonin is also linked to depression. So there's a link there. So basically you're more prone to depression and even suicidal. So this is the part of the presentation that is not my favorite. I like fun and uplifting things, but stress and depression are very important when you're talking about diabetes because those things can really affect how you manage your illness. So we do take the time to talk about them. So women are twice as often as men to be depressed when they have diabetes. We are at increased risk. Women often have more hormonal changes, just being a female. We often have additional responsibilities. We can be single parents and caring for aging parents. Not to say that men might not have some of these as well, because we often see men as single parents and they also help care for their aging parents as well. So some symptoms of depression. I know you've probably heard these 100 times, but there might be a few things on the list you hadn't really thought about. So loss of interest or pleasure in things you normally do. If you sleep too much or too little, if you eat too much or too little, concentration problems. That's one I don't know that people always think about, but that it can be a symptom of depression. Loss of energy, nervousness, guilt, moving, sadness. I'm not sure what that is supposed to mean, but I'm sure if you have an increase in sadness, that just doesn't go away. Of course, suicidal thoughts can be associated with depression. You can be withdrawn. You can be declining at your work or school performance. So if these symptoms, I think everybody gets down and depressed or maybe has a little problems once in a while, but if these are ongoing symptoms, please see your physician and go and talk to them about it. Depression certainly has a stigma on it, and it has for many, many years. Occasionally we see some like actors, professional sports people come out and talk about it a little bit. And so I think that's really good. Depression isn't something that you choose to be necessarily. So you can't just wake up one day and say, oh, I think I'm going to be depressed for 6 months. That's not really how it happens. Sometimes we get depressed and we don't recognize we're depressed, but it isn't something we usually can just snap out of. So I know people give a lot of advice when you're feeling down and out, but snapping out of it's probably not going to happen. So if it's something that lingers, go ahead and contact your doctor, talk to them. You know, there's medication. We may find that just some counseling might help. And people are just really hesitant to, seek out care when they need it. But depression is very treatable. And if they do put you on medication, it doesn't mean you're going to be on medication for life. Maybe it's just getting through a tough time and eventually you can get back off that medication. Once we find some, looking at different coping skills can also help as well. So I thought I'd throw in some coping strategies that maybe would help us just with stress and maybe with some depression. And this is something I hadn't really seen out in the literature, but I found this article and I thought it was really good. So one of the coping strategies is calming. It's a calming strategy. The intent is to reverse the stress response. And I thought that's brilliant. I mean, It's just a great way. We can't sometimes change everything, but we can sometimes reverse that stress response. So what you do is find a quiet place, take 3 slow, deep breaths, try to calm your mind. And these really play into relaxation type activities. So that's one strategy that you could try. Emotional strategy. So this one doesn't really change the situation, but it can change your perception. So instead of looking at your problem as devastating and useless and hopeless, if we can look at that threat as a challenge instead, so we've got to find a better way to manage it. So you might try humor, journaling is another option, positive visualizations. I know that some situations this wouldn't be appropriate for, but sometimes you can do that. You can find a tough situation and try to make light of it and see it in a way that, what can I gain from this, instead of I'm just going to lose. And then there's a strategy called solution. And this, you use time management strategies. You can talk with a friend or a counselor. You could do conflict resolution. The solution one is really looking at trying to solve the problem. So the first one, we're going to reverse the stress response. The second one looks at changing your outlook on the problem that you're having. And the solution one looks at trying to solve that problem. Then I have a few more coping tips in here. I just listed these. I thought some of them were pretty interesting. Reduce the demands on your time. I think that's very important. We really tend to overextend ourselves. And once you get in, it's kind of hard to say no. But you know, it's okay to say no sometimes. We have to do that for our own mental health. Identify your thoughts. That one is important too. I know that personally, I can get way off track. I can get, as my coworker says, I'm spinning. And the more she says that, the more I identify when I do that, because I get stuck on something and I just can't see a way out of it. So I just kind of keep grumbling it to myself about it. And that really doesn't solve anything. So identifying your thoughts sometimes really helps for you to start laying out a plan on how you're going to manage your stress better. You can see, talk to others, hobbies, journaling, counseling, break it down in steps. Sometimes things are so overwhelming. If you can list things out, it can help you manage them a little bit better. Some more coping tips. These focus a little more on, the first things are more kind of things that you think about and plan out. This is kind of focuses more on home things you can do. So of course, meditation is always a great thing to do. Routine auto delivery. This has come into play, I think, a lot more with COVID. Some people kind of got used to auto, ordering their food, ordering groceries, ordering their Walmart delivery. And there are so many people that have loved this. It's a huge business out there now. Can really release some stress, though, not having to get out, go to the store, make a list, have somebody else do all your shopping for you. Stay organized, food delivery, simplify meals. We don't always have to have a 7-course meal for every day. Try to plan out your meals and make them really simple. That will help ease some stress. Of course, plan ahead. Vacuum sealers are good if you are a single person and you're making meals. A lot of people don't like to cook because there's only one person there with them. It's not that easy to save food, but you can use vacuum sealers and freeze them and use them later. Next week, you won't even have to cook if you plan it right. Sometimes walk in the morning or warm bath before bed. And the last one I found, we're seeing a lot more information on mood journaling. And that is just taking a journal and really focusing on your feelings that morning, how you're feeling, what you're doing, or maybe at the end of the day, how your day went. What was you happy that day, sad that day? Sometimes identifying those, your mood and your emotions can really help you be on top of managing your mood better. Okay, so now we're going back to that list that you guys made of all those things that stressed you out. So recall what you wrote down and what was the most challenging to you. I want you guys to think about how you have handled it in the past. Was your strategy successful? Are you pleased with the outcome? And if not, what can you do differently? So meals are one of the things that single people mention a lot, that they are a real big challenge for them. So, some suggestions on that. You could do a meal order delivery if you like. It's just a little harder to order fast food that is healthy. You can freeze foods. You can cut your meat in half before you cook it and freeze half of it, or you can cook it all at once and freeze the leftovers. So I just really want you guys to try to think about that. If you guys have some specific things that you really can't find any alternatives to, please feel free to email me, and I'm happy to sit down and help you problem solve, see if we can come up with some good ideas on how to manage your most stressful problem with diabetes. So now I got to ask, how many, if you guys would chat me and tell me how many challenges that you guys have identified. I'd be curious. Can you guys do that for me? Give me a chat and just let me know how many challenges you identified. I'm sure there are a lot more than I put on my screen. All righty, let's see here. So one person has identified 3. Another came up with 7. She wrote, I came up with 7 quickly. Another one wrote 3. Awesome. And you guys may have not have gotten to the point where I had all those on the screen. Like I said, I don't have diabetes. And so it's pretty easy for me to cheat because I know all the problems people tell me. And then the 4th person said she has 4. So if you guys, after this presentation, you guys want to take a little time, sit down and really look at those challenges. I'm hoping that something in this presentation gave you some tips or suggestions. If not, please email me. I have a lot of people that I can get with. I have dietitians, another certified diabetes educator, and we can help problem solve those and see if we can come up with some options that might be make diabetes a little more manageable for you guys. Now, let's see what else we got here. My screen is not advancing. So we're going to throw in here at the end, we're almost done. So this is kind of a plan of action to for stress and depression. If you guys actively have diabetes and you are checking your glucose, when you are stressed or depressed, it's really important to watch your glucose a little more closely. Sickness it is a form of stress as well. So if you're sick, you have increased stress or depression, you might try checking your blood sugar just a little more frequently. Jot it down, keep a log. Also document how you're feeling when you're checking that blood sugar. Are we feeling, if you're sick, of course, write sick. Are you weak? Are you unhappy? Have you had a family dispute and you're upset? Or if you're angry, write those things down. We are not very good as a society about identifying our emotions. And I think doing that can really help you manage your stress, which in turn will help you manage diabetes better. Also look for patterns and evaluate your successes. We're not just looking for what we do bad, we're looking for what we do good as well. I think that's part of the problem when you have a chronic illness is that we really look at all the horrible things about it. But what we need to be looking at is what are we doing about it? What have we done? All of you guys that are signed up right here today are successful because you have identified something you want to learn more about, and you're actively in this Sweet Success program, learning as much as you can. That is a huge success. You can't fix something if you don't know enough about it to manage it. So kudos to you guys. Congratulations. So in summary, stress can be a contributing factor or a consequence of diabetes. It can affect us emotionally, mentally, and physically. It can affect our lifestyle choices, our hormones, and our immune system. I encourage you to log your blood sugars and feelings and emotions, look for patterns, and evaluate your coping strategies. I I've been a professional for many, many years. Throughout the years, I have frequently had situations that have arose in my personal life and my professional life. And when I'm unsatisfied with the outcome, I go back and look at that and I try to identify what I could have done better to have a better outcome. And I think that's a great tip for everybody in life in general, but also when you have chronic illnesses such as diabetes or depression. Try to go back and look at it and say, okay, what did I do good? What do I need to improve on? And how can I do that to make it successful every time? And always, always contact your doctor with any symptoms of depression or suicidal thoughts. I think COVID has even increased the suicide rate. So I just encourage everybody, please call your doctor if you feel that way. They are somebody that can help you. If you don't feel comfortable with a doctor, please find a friend, or the suicide hotline is also a good number to call. And those people can help you get back on track a little bit. I had to steal this because I love it. Stressed is desserts spelled backwards. I knew everybody would appreciate that because we all love desserts. Do you guys have any questions for me? If you do, please chat me. If there's something you want to know more about, or any kind of questions, if you have questions related to diabetes, related to your logs, I hope you guys are still trying to do your logs, your food log, exercise log. Those are really helpful in keeping you accountable. Accountability is something that will help you with diabetes. Of course, I have references there. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And it doesn't look like, give me just a second here. I'm going to see if I can find that other. And I don't see it. Okay, ladies, so I see that's all we have on currently are the ladies. I will go ahead, and when I send your email out this week, I'm going to just attach a list of things that you guys might be interested in that's coming up. I do hope that you guys learned a little something today. Sometimes I have people I've had in past classes. Christina, I hope I've changed that up a little bit so you could learn something a little bit different. But do you have one question? Let's see what it is here real quick. Okay, Christina, how blood glucoses are effective during and or after working out? Definitely. Yes. So your blood sugar does change when we exercise. For somebody that is on medications for diabetes and you're planning on really getting gung-ho with your exercise, it might be something you want to check your glucose before you exercise, during exercise, and after exercise. We actually have a pretty good handout that will be coming up when we do our exercise program. It is a little chart, and I think I promised it to somebody and haven't got it there yet. But it's a chart where you can actually document those things. When you exercise, your muscle cells demand more energy because you are expending more energy. So your cells actually kind of, if you think about your cell being a round circle like this, when you exercise, your muscle cells elongate. And so you have a lot more surface areas to be able to let that insulin go up to the door and try to open it. And so when we exercise, we tend to use more of our glucose that's in the bloodstream, which is great because that's a great way to lower your blood sugar. That's why exercise is one of the main things, along with diet, to try to manage diabetes. That answer your question, Christine? So you can actually have a low blood sugar up to a couple hours after you exercise. So that's something to know too. It kind of depends on medication. Metformin, it doesn't really too much affect probably exercise, but if you're taking something such as a sulfonylurea, that is something that does does affect your blood sugar if you don't eat and you don't have enough glucose on board. So, you know, depending on medication, you may want to make sure that you're checking it before and after exercise. Any more questions? Well, listen, thank you all for coming. We'll have our presentation again will be next week. I look forward to seeing everybody. And I don't have that right in front of me, but I will give you guys an email with today's tips or this week's tips. And you guys feel free to text me, email me anytime. I'm not sure I have everybody's starting A1C. So if you haven't sent it to me, please send it to me. That is one of the methods we use to evaluate the program to see if the outcomes have improved. And that helps us also improve our program. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.